Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to season 3 of the Made to Win podcast. Man, I'm so grateful for everyone who has been supportive and encouraging in this journey. I hope to bring some great content this season. This season's theme is going to be all about habits in our lives, practices in our lives, things to help us in our everyday journey to be transformed within our soul, because this is a soul-winning podcast. It's all about winning in the mind and the heart and the soul, emotionally, all those things. Just becoming a better follower of Jesus and a better leader in our lives. So I hope you guys enjoy this season as we each week jump into a different conversation built around habits and different things like that. And I'll try to even do some elaboration on each one. So there might even be 2 episodes per habit or practice. I'm excited about this first episode because we have a returning guest, no stranger to me, my family, and a lot of people here at Generation Church. Stephen Webb, better known as SWebb, as he is nicknamed. He has been on staff at Elevation Church, several other mega churches, as usually a campus pastor or a person who builds campus pastors and trains them. He helped start 9 different campuses at Elevation Church outside of the city of Charlotte, and the last one he helped launch was the Orlando campus before moving to Texas and going on staff there. Now he is a consultant for leaders, pastors, churches all over the world. My homie's about to go to Brazil and to Thailand to pour into some pastors. So he is an incredible thinker. He is one of the co-hosts of the Think Less podcast, and he has a free ebook out there if you go to his website, which is in the show at the end of the episode. And man, we just had a fun time having conversations around New Year's resolutions, habits that we build, burnout, spiritual burnout, attention in ministry and family, just so many conversations around a lot of topics that people are dealing with at the first of the year. So if you want to become a better person, better thinker, and better at being consistent in your life and winning, you need to check out this episode and check out my good friend SWebb. So I'm excited as we jump into episode 1 of season 3 with my good friend SWebb.
Dude, how are you doing, man?
Fantabulous. You're looking lean, man. Yeah. Looking lean.
Dude, if you don't eat and you put up the proper lighting, both of those work together pretty good. That's kind of how that works. But I'm cold, man. What you don't see in this shot right here is that I'm sitting under a blanket like an old dude. I was about to give me some hot tea, but instead I found me a Zevia, and I thought, well, I'll just drink a cold Zevia instead. But
that's what I told Jess. I was like, ever since we started the fast, I can't feel my hands. I'm pretty sure they're just numb 24/7.
Yeah, totally. It's so frustrating.
Dude, I'm stoked to have this conversation.
Yeah, man.
Get to talk about this stuff. So I think it's something that's probably in the mind of everybody at this time of year anyways. I know you and I talked about why we do certain things at the first of the year. And so just sitting around this conversation around New Year, same exhaustion. So for those of you guys that are tuning in and you've never met the SWebb, this is the Stephen Webb, otherwise known as SWebb. It feels weird if I ever call you Stephen, because I never call you Stephen. Does anybody call you Stephen? Does your wife call you Stephen?
That's it. My mom and my wife call me that, and that's about it, man. So I'd prefer be SWebb. But you know what's funny, man? I actually consciously thought this yesterday. I'm at the park playground right by my house with my kid, and this lady knew me because she knows my son and she knows my wife. She says, "Hey, are you Lauren's husband?" And it's like, "Yeah." So I walk over there, shake her hand, and introduce myself as Stephen, which was so weird because I never do that. But lately, I have found that when I say SWebb, somehow it comes across, I don't know, I mumble, I stutter. I have no idea what it is. But people, they ask me like, what? Sweat? Swit? Sven? And so it's so frustrating. But yes, if people know how to say it, I'd prefer be SWebb. But it's become an endeavor just to say it correctly.
Well, our executive pastor, he has trouble talking English anyways. We always say that he talks in Appalachian, but he always adds a CH in there.
Yep.
So it turns out SWebb.
It bugs me, man.
I know.
A lot of people do that too.
It's not SWebb. This is not Wayne's World. Yeah.
Right.
SWebb.
Not quite the same.
Yeah, it's not, man. Well, for people who don't know, SWebb, you were on season 1, I believe, of this podcast. So you are a return guest, man.
Man, I passed. That's great.
You are.
I love it.
Highly valued in my life, also an overseer, and just a really good friend, mentor, person to learn from. And so I'm excited for people to get to learn from you today on this conversation.
Yeah.
And
thanks,
so
man.
Let's talk about the new year, man. Let's talk about what you're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I've been fasting, which is not a normal thing for me. I'm not super spiritual, which may come as a surprise to people who know me. But I can unpack that any other time you want. But I typically start every year with some version of a fast. Sometimes it's 7 days, 10. Sometimes it's just arbitrary. I go until I'm like, well, I think I'm done. And so right now I decided liquid only, which is pretty broad, man. You can liquefy ice cream and pizza if you really wanted to. But the first couple of days, and I never do that, but the first couple of days I thought I'm gonna go hardcore. And so I'm averaging less than 500 calories a day. I don't do smoothies even. It's a lot of black coffee, coconut oil, water, Zevias. I treat myself with a Diet Dr. Pepper, which is, again, no calories. So it's pretty nuts, man. I'm 18 or 19. What am I, 20 days in? I don't even know. Once you're fasting, I don't count anymore. It's just trying to make it through now.
Getting through the next day. That's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. It was funny because, we started ours on the 8th. And so the 9th, we had like this director's meeting or whatever. And it was just like, it was miserable, bro. I'm like, why do we even try to have a meeting today? And so this past Monday, I was like, hey guys, good news. This week, I actually love Jesus and love people. So we can talk. Last week, not so much. But yeah, same here. Like we fast every year at this time, different reasons. I love what you said. Like not every time you have to fast does it have to be like a super spiritual thing, but it is something great to reset your body, all those different things. But yeah, I did 8 days liquid only. Excuse me. But I think I told you, like, I lost 20 pounds. Yeah, man. And I was like, I might need to put something in my body. Like, yeah. I don't want to be 3 weeks in.
It messes with my mind. And you're an athlete. I like to think I'm an athlete. So when I go to the gym, I'm like, man, these 25-pound dumbbells get heavy, then they get 20, then they're 15. Then I do like 20 reps of 10-pound dumbbells this morning. I'm like, I'm kind of done, man.
Yeah.
I just kind of, my strength is gone. I've got these little tiny arms now. And it's funny from the, manhood side of it. But I just keep telling myself, it's cool. I'll fuel myself back up with the proper thing, come the end of this month. But it's the mental stuff. Again, not even the hunger. I'm past the hunger part. But now I'm like, man, I just feel like, dude, man, I'm smaller in the mirror, but I'm smaller in other areas too. Like again, my arms or whatever. So it's just kind of a goofy, funny feeling. I'm changing my workout and everything.
You feel like you're just like one step away from sweating to the oldies,
Yes,
like
exactly. I do want to wear a big tight unitard though. I feel like I probably could do that now. Maybe, you know what? I'm gonna spin. I'm gonna flip the lens. I'm gonna be positive. I'm gonna tell my wife I'm gonna come out in a unitard tomorrow. That's what I'll do for her viewing pleasure.
Oh my gosh. So any other thing that how do you approach a new year? Do you set goals? Do you set resolutions?
Man, I don't. And that's a good question. So I'm a big fan of, I am the guy who kind of needs the new year. It's cliche. It's a date on the calendar. It's purely arbitrary, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing magical about the day, right. But maybe it's just the way our world is wired the last, I don't know, what is it, century or 50 years? I don't know what it is that made the new year so special, but I kind of need that personally. My brain just kind of works that way. I say on Mondays, every Monday, if I had a bad week or whatever, go, all right, today's Monday. Yeah. So for me, mentally, I do look forward to the new year as this mental break of I'm going to do some new things. However, I'm not really a big goal setter. I'm more of a point in a direction and just run hard. So I'm not the achiever, never have been. I have achieved a lot, but not because I'm an achiever, but more because I hustle and push and run fast in a direction. And then I also get surprised too. When I want to do that, I'm like, oh, I've actually achieved a lot more than I thought I would because I wasn't stopping at a goal either. A lot of times I'll push past whatever other people might call a goal. So that's what I do. That helps me. That's why I said, I started this fast, and really if I went 7 days, I'd be thrilled. And then day 13 or 14, I was like, well, dang it, that's 2 weeks. I might as well just keep on going. And now I've kind of committed. My wife's birthday's on the 31st. And so I'm just, I'll just go to the 30th, and then we'll just go ham on the 31st for the birthday. Yeah. But see what I'm saying? I just kind of pointed in that direction. And as well as as good as I feel, and if I'm making some sort of headway in whatever it is, then that's what I'm doing. Can I tell you about another fast we're doing though?
Yeah, let's go.
This one might be more entertaining. We do a spending fast every year. My wife and our family, I guess, but my kids have less authority over our finances. So, we've done this for many years, but we do a spending fast. So we're not spending any money right now, except on the obvious essentials.
Yeah.
And essentials, of course means groceries, but it doesn't mean ice cream at the grocery store. It doesn't mean that kind of stuff. So, right. So yeah, we've been doing that. And that's also another great way to reset. And that one's a little easier from a timing standpoint because it fits into your kind of fiscal year, even your personal finances. You kind of start in January, pay taxes, after December 31st, you start working towards that. So we do start the year with that. And it's been a really big deal for us over the years. And we've seen tremendous, fruit from that. And I might say that's even harder than the food fast sometimes. I know a lot of emotions are tied to food and things like that, but spending fast is a whole different animal because I feel like you're a lot more loose with that.
Yeah.
You just, it's fine. I'll just grab a Dr. Pepper. Oh, that's cool, man. I'm just going to grab me some chips real quick. And then, $400 a month later, you're like, whoa. So we really enjoyed that priority recalibration with the spending fast.
Well, I think all that stuff's emotional. You think about Amazon, how many people are just addicted to hitting that, because it's so easy, right? I mean, it's one or two clicks and it's like, it's at my house, So that's so good. The way I try to look at it, we talked about this, but this idea of we overestimate, I think, what we can do in a short amount of time, but then underestimate what we can do in a long period of time.
That's right.
And so the new year for me is almost like, I don't know if you were a video game kid growing up, but
yeah,
when you were able to finally like save your progress, either, when you needed a break, you either reset the game or turn the game off so that you could, do something different, right? Give your brain space for something else, and I think, but then whenever you turn the game back on, you're able to continue progress toward the journey that you're trying to accomplish, right? And I think sometimes, the new year for a lot of people is like, I need to start over. I need to, start something new, start something fresh. But I think there is such a beauty in like resetting for the direction that you're already going, right? Consistency.
That's right.
Because the new year is famous for getting into shape, doing some of those things, but it's over after a month or so,
Well, people, get addicted to starting stuff and it feels good because you can tweet about that. You can post about that. Like, dude, I'm starting my fast today. You've seen it. You posted it. I posted it. It's like, all right, I'm going on a social media fast. So you have to announce the fact that you're not going to be announcing stuff. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah.
So we all like to start things, but it's getting done on the back end that people don't like to practice. So like, funny enough, last night, my daughter got a guitar for Christmas. She's 11 and she's wanted to be at this. She keeps telling me she's going to be a famous musician. And I haven't told her no, but I also haven't told her also.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't you be a musician and we'll talk about the famous part later.
Yeah.
But, and that's a word for a lot of people right there.
No doubt.
But all that to say, she was, playing for me last night. She's like, can I play for you? I'll show you what I've learned. And every time she'd mess up, she'd stop and start over. And I kept saying, no, stop. Every time you do that, you're simply just practicing your failure over and over and over. I want you to see what it's like to practice your finish. Yeah. So just go past that mistake and then finish and then finish and then finish and see what the end of the song sounds like. And of course it's frustrating and she tries it, but then sure enough, she has now learned what the finish is. And I feel like that's true with fasting or almost anything you do. Is like, well, you know what? Never mind. I won't finish 2022. I'll just wait to restart in 2023.
Yeah.
And then they're going to break their fast halfway through January. But you know what? I tell you what, I'm just going to start again in February 1st instead of finish the month. And I feel like that's true in so many things, man. And so that's something that I'm trying to do is simply just point a direction. And again, not a goal, but sometimes I do want to finish something. And that's been a wrestling place with me, or that's something I wrestle with even more so the last few years. But anyway, that's definitely on my mind now is we'd love to start, but we hate to finish.
Well, man, that is so gold. But even along those same veins of like, it's funny because you say that because I have a buddy. He's like, every year it's like, man, he has a hashtag abs 2016. He's wanted abs since 2016. So every year it's like he's still trying to get there from,
Right.
But, I think people are enamored with this idea of starting something. They never thought about what they're going to have to quit in order to start and finish.
Yes.
And so maybe talk about this idea of like, maybe our lives aren't transformed by addition, but maybe subtraction.
100%. I mean, all the time. I'm almost everything. I feel like I know that might be oversimplifying, but I agree. And I love that you asked the question, brought it up. I've thought about it a lot. But I mean, isn't there a cliche about that? Like every yes is to something is a no to something else or some version of that. And that's very true. I think that the issue is, of course, people just don't intentionally think about it. And I guess it's that, that separation anxiety. Oh man, I really like this too. I'll just do less of it. And so, yeah, you have to subtract something out of your life. I actually enjoy that though. That doesn't seem to be a huge problem with me. I'm the guy that throws stuff away. I'm the guy that is happy to do a garage sale every other weekend if we could. Like, what can I do to just get rid of stuff? And me, man, I'm happy to get rid of staff off of teams. Like, it's not because they're bad people, but it's like, hey, there's a more important, there's a more important longevity, for example, and we're talking about a team. We're talking about salary. We're not talking about a person's place in eternity or something, right? And those are separate. I'm good at separating those things, but I know that's hard for a lot of people. But I think even just you bringing up the question is probably going to help a lot of people because somebody's going to have to wrestle with that today. And they just need to simply ask the question is, I want to say yes to this, but I got to say no to something else. And before they even pick what the no is, maybe it's just saying it out loud that I have to.
Right.
And then that thing could just gnaw on them for a while. Fine. At least they're having to think about it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to, if you're going to go somewhere everywhere you go, anything you do, I feel like it's some version of a journey. Maybe that's a good kind of mental model for people. You're going on a journey and just imagine that, like, carry all that stuff to the end of your block, like literally go outside and carry all the junk you want to keep. Just carry it to the end of the block and see how much of a hassle that is. And try to do that mentally too. Like, you want to lose weight, go, what are you going to carry with you to do that? You want to buy all these things and retire early. Okay, cool. But you think you can really carry all of those, sodas or candies or other stuff that you spend money on? You really think you can carry that into the future as well? And I feel like just picturing it is helpful for me. So it's something I try to do.
Oh, that's so good. I heard somebody say this one time, like, picture the end in mind, or picture, even this applies to so many different things in life, like
that's right.
When you're about to make a decision that's life altering, right? Like,
right.
Most people can't, I think it was Andy Stanley maybe in his book, but he talked about how, like, most people can't picture the fallout, right? They only picture the gratification in the moment. And it's so funny because so many people that, whether it's a health journey, spiritual journey, whatever, the excuses they give for quitting or never starting, man, there's so much, to me, they're less weightier than the decision to hang on to whatever it is you're doing. Hang on to the diet that you're doing. Because, I mean, you're seeing all of the consequences, right? You're always tired. You never are motivated to do anything, and it's like all of this stuff, health issues. You're always at the doctor. You're always on prescribed medicine, whatever. Like, to me, those are things that I would feel like, man, that is so much heavier to carry around than to actually make the decision towards a transformation, right? Or to do something 100%. Consistent.
100%. I think people have a low tolerance for ambiguity is what it is. At least I'm sure of what I have, but if I release something, then I don't know what's next. And that, I find that even to be true in the simple things you and I are talking about now, whether it be just maybe just changing a few simple things in your budget or your diet. It's not like having to quit a job and move across the country or something. I've done that even multiple times, but I have a higher tolerance of ambiguity. The funny thing about that though is I just don't know how that's any different than freaking faith.
Yeah.
Like, you can't preach it and speak it all day long and then be like, oh, but I just don't want to. And again, it's silly with the diet conversation or budget, but even still, it's subconsciously people just have this, like, at least I know what I have. I'm used to buying it this way. I'm used to the simple, buy now, click button on Amazon. I'm used to that. And it's that comfort. But if I don't have that anymore, now I'm gonna have to change a rhythm. I'm gonna have to read another website. I'm gonna have to, like, think through this other process. I don't know what that's going to feel like. So now we're right back into this phrase, I don't know. And people have a really hard time, I think, with ambiguity, and they need to, I would say that, let me say this. I feel, and maybe I posted this recently. People like to pray a lot of prayers. It's like, God, give me this. God, just be with us is one of the favorite prayers that I'm pretty sure God hates, by the way. He's like, well, you haven't read the Bible.
I say that all the time. It's so funny.
Okay, good. So instead of God be with us today, maybe it's, hey, God, give me a higher tolerance for ambiguity. And so, because ambiguity is just an awareness that you don't know everything. Risk is different. It means you didn't prepare. And I know there's risk in everything. And I love to talk about that too, but I just like the word ambiguity instead. It's like, it exists. There's a lot of stuff I'm just not going to know. And so I'm going to admit that ambiguity exists in almost anything. Again, risk exists probably almost anywhere. And so instead of me trying to like build my life in a way that eliminates it, I just want to raise my tolerance for it. And to me, that might be one of the most freeing prayers anybody could pray, as well as probably being one of the more dangerous prayers anybody could pray.
Man, that's so good. It reminds me of, I guess, like the early church, whenever they had experienced their first real taste of persecution, and the Bible says they go back and they're like bragging about it. Like, bro, we just got whooped, we just got beaten. And I find it so powerful that the Bible says they began to pray. They did not pray for safety. They did not pray for a way out or for persecution to leave. They prayed for power. They prayed basically like what you just said. They prayed for the ability to make space in their life to endure the suffering and persecution and trial they were about to encounter. And and I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because I think we are a culture, our modern society, that just cannot stand the thought of going through something really difficult.
Right.
And never, even when we are praying, it's always to escape the difficult instead of like, hey, how can I actually use this for my growth, my betterment and transformation? And so I think that is so key.
Hang on. So the conversation you and I had last time we were doing this podcast, man, is that idea of just do hard things. I told you, I asked my kids that. I think you parent similarly. But it just reminds me of that, man. Like, do something hard today by, again, do something that you're uncertain of the outcome. I'm happy with people to start a fast and then, quit, as long as it was hard for them to begin with, to jump into the ambiguity. Yeah. So, so that's kind of a theme that you and I've had, in conversations for a few years. And so to me, that applies here. So God, give me a higher tolerance for ambiguity. And then people need to lean into that, because at the end of the day too, you're right. They can't imagine themselves having to do something uncomfortable or hard. Problem is, every time you do that, you lower the bar for what's hard. Yeah. Right. So, and then later, hard becomes simply buying things on another website besides Amazon. Think about how people think that stuff's hard. Yeah. I'm not really into computers anymore. And all of a sudden you can't restart your computer or update your browser. Like, I was literally helping somebody do that no less than an hour ago, literally on the phone. And that's just funny to me, but that wasn't hard for them 10 years ago. The problem is they just kind of mailed it in over the years, and their definition of hard or frustrating, it just continues to lower and lower and lower. Yeah. And there's a reason that at your age, and I don't mean that in a negative way, that you're still able to do the Murph and all the things that you do that still baffle me. But that's because in that particular expression, in this case, physical fitness, you keep the bar of hard so high. And it's, again, we see that in a lot of areas. And I just wonder if people could take the principle instead of just the expression, the principle, and apply it across. Like, what level of risk is hard for you? Yeah. Raise that bar. What level of, fasting or prayer or whatever, what's hard for you? Raise it. Hey, is it hard to get up at 6:15? Okay, but next week, let's do 6:10. Next week, do 6:05. Yeah. Whatever. Like, just continue to raise the bar of whatever's hard, rather than compartmentalize hard for what is, quote, hard things. Some people say, well, diet's supposed to be easy, fitness is supposed to be hard. Or they say, fitness and diet is supposed to be hard, but raising kids, that's supposed to be easy. Or reading the Bible is a funny one. Like, our Christian life is supposed to be easy, but fitness is supposed to be hard, SWebb. So I'm supposed to sweat and hurt there. But in my Christian life, leadership in church, I'm supposed to make decisions that please everybody on my staff or in my church. What? I don't understand what you just said. And so maybe I could say it this way. I don't know that you're able to compartmentalize hard. I think you just need to keep the bar high across the board and let's do hard things.
That's so good. You know, I was watching, I'm training for, I have 3 different things I want to train for. One is I'm doing my first ever half marathon this year. And of course I'll start training for the Murph in March. And then I want to train for a workout called the Clovis, but it's a 10-mile run. And then 150 burpee to pull-ups, all with a weighted vest. And so that one I'm pretty nervous about.
That sounds terrible.
But they talk about when you're trying to build up your endurance to run, they talk about what's called zone 2 training.
Okay. And
zone 2, because most people are like, okay, I want to run a long distance. And so, you know, they just out the gate, you know, they're trying to run a 7-8 minute mile, whatever it is that they're trying to do. And then they get gas and they're like, oh my gosh, it took me 20 minutes to run a mile and a half, whatever. But he talks about zone 2 training, and he says when you first begin to train, you actually have to build your aerobic, your anaerobic ability to basically handle long distance at a normal, not an elevated heart rate, but not at your peak. And for me, I think that's the mistake that most people make is they're trying to get to the peak before getting to just like, man, I love what you said. You didn't get up at 6:15, get up at 6:10.
Right.
This guy, he told me, it was so funny because, like, you know, those guys, I mean, it's just like, man, okay, man, first time he's ever done a liquid fast. He's like, I'm going 21 days. And I just knew this guy. Like, I was like, I said, look, bro, I appreciate, you know, man, that sounds really heroic. I said, I'm telling you, that's a bad goal. I said, I'm a disciplined person. And the first time I ever did it, I knew, like, I'm not going to set that as my goal to go 21 days. Right. And so I saw him a week later. I was like, hey, what day are you on? How you doing? He's like, I made it 2 days, man. You know, and I was kind of laughing. I was like, that's okay. I said, but like, did you just give up altogether? Or did you say, okay, like I'm going to maybe go liquid half a day, you know, or, you know, I think there's this, for some reason, to me, that's one of the mistakes people make. It's like, it's all or nothing. And there's no zone 2 training in their life.
That's right.
Like, how do I build up to become the kind of person that can go on a liquid fast for 30 days? You know,
that's right.
Do those type of things. And I think that's one of the mistakes that people make going into setting goals, whatever, is like they have these goals up here, but they're planning for the plan, right?
Yeah.
It's because everybody has good intentions, but good intentions without a plan is nothing but a wish. Like people wish they could lose weight. People wish they could run a Murph or do whatever.
Right.
But they're not doing the little incremental zone 2 things to get there.
Yeah. No, 100%. That goes back to that. Just practice finishing. And I'm glad you told your buddy that. Like, okay, but now just a half day of liquid if you have to. Man, just the other day, was it 2 nights ago or 3 days ago? I was listening or on Instagram. I follow Jesse Itzler. You follow that dude?
Yes.
Godzillionaire married to Sarah Blakely. He's like that runner.
Yeah.
He the runner guy. I mean, he does a bunch of stuff, but now he's just, how many times can he get in a cold plunge is basically.
Yeah. I sort of say he's a cold plunge guy, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Over the top. That's his gospel right now. But you know, and he does those ridiculous long 100-mile races and those kind of things. He's always trying to just beat himself up as a regular dude, by the way. So if whoever's listening and doesn't know Jesse Itzler, follow him, just go pay attention because he's a regular. I think he's regular. I mean, sure, he's got more money than the rest of us, but that's not the vibe he gives off at all. And he's just a regular dad. He's got great kids and a great wife, and they seem like an all-American family. Just like I said, just a bigger checking account. And so don't hear me say this is some super athlete. It's just he's put himself in positions to do hard things. But all that to say, he just the other day, I don't know why I never knew this about him, but he said, I don't feel bad about it. But there's most of the marathons and 100-mile races and things like that I do, I'm walking halfway through it. I was like, wait, what? And he goes into this whole explanation. He's like, no.
That's awesome.
I set out to do hard things, but I also set out to finish things. And it's not an either or. And he said, so I'll walk. He said, when I get tired, I'll walk. I just keep going. And again, you need to read his books and all those kind of things to figure out the fact that he's actually doing hard things that are beyond what a lot of us would say is hard. But that was really freeing for me because all I've ever seen is his highlight reels. Yes. Right. Of him doing these he does all these Everest runs, meaning, you know, he runs up and down a hill until it's 29,000 feet or whatever. But when he said, no, dude, I'll walk half this stuff. Because again, he's practicing doing hard, but he's on the back end practicing finishing, and very few people rehearse a finish. And I wish more people would do that.
Dude, that is so good, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because I do think that when people don't see other people's failures or struggle, and they see these crazy, like, have you ever heard of Cameron Haynes?
Yeah.
So, you know, him and David Goggins are real tight. So, you know, it's like two of the craziest guys, you know, you ever see on the internet or in the world or whatever. The guy, like, literally runs a marathon every day, not like every year, every day runs a marathon. He runs 13 miles to work or whatever, runs 13 miles home. He says he shoots, I can't remember if he says it, he shoots 100 arrows a day. He's sponsored by all these archery type stuff. He's a huge, you know, bow hunter or whatever. It's like one of the most professional bow hunter people in the world or whatever. Dude can, like, send an arrow 100 yards through a window of a gap this big or something like that. It's crazy. But the dude also works a job, is a dad, all this stuff. And he has this quote in his documentary. It's just like, he says people always, when he meets people, they've watched all of his videos, they say something like this: must be nice.
Yeah.
Must be nice. Yeah. And he's just like laughs. And he's like, if you're willing to do the hard things that I'm willing to do, you could have the same thing, you know.
That's right.
But that seems to be the attitude of people, is that there's always an excuse of why you have what you have, or are able to do what you do. Oh, you just have a better metabolism, or you just have a better blah, blah, blah.
That's right.
And they totally discount, you know, what it takes, being able to do the hard things to get to those places, right?
Bro, happens all the time. Here's what I would push back on some of those people, though. Okay, fine. Then I'm going to help identify things that you have, that we think is easy, and you're not even maxing that out either.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So you know, I'm petty and sarcastic. You know, I'm gonna come at people if they're gonna be that way. Like, because funny enough, I'm the guy with the slow metabolism.
Yeah.
I legitimately am the, you know, genetically that guy, and I know that. So I just was like, well, but it would be easier and better for me to work at it than again roll out the door to work. It's just, I don't want to be fluffy. And so I do get the valid excuses, or, you know, I wasn't raised in a family that's going to give me a big inheritance, or the things that other people might say, oh, that must be nice. But I could walk into anyone's house and find a must be nice about them real fast. But they're still sandbagging. They're still just mailing in at a C average, because you know what? It is nice and they don't have to work for it. And so even if the things you do have are easy, find a way to make it hard.
Yeah.
You know, just keep pushing on something. At least maximize what you do have then.
Well, and I've never heard you, like, you've never told me, like, I just have a slow metabolism. Like, you know, I've never heard you use that as an excuse, which is powerful. Like, it might, like, I love what you said. It might be a reality, but it doesn't have to be your limiter on every single thing in your life.
No, can't be.
I mean, what a great motto to live by, right? I don't want to be fluffy.
Yeah, I got 2 mottos in life: don't suck, and I don't want to be fluffy. That's it.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Oh man.
Well, I want to jump into, like, transition into this idea of burnout. Because I heard you do on your podcast a whole episode on burnout that I thought was just like, oh my gosh, I wish everybody could hear this and listen to this and embrace this. So what is your definite, because listen, if my audience doesn't know, there is a SWebb version for every thought word. Like, if don't even look in the Webster dictionary, look in the Swebster dictionary. In fact, there you go. That is your new, bro, I better get royalties on this. You need to write a book called the Swebster's Dictionary and just come up with like 25 like words that people use that you think are misused, and redefine them for a way to like wake people up, bro. There you go, man.
Webster's Dictionary. I haven't heard that one. Somebody the other day said you need to put a glossary in your next ebook on Swebbisms. These are the words.
I love it. So what is the Webster Dictionary version of burnout? What does that mean to you when people say, I'm just burnout?
So, man, I have so much to talk about based on just the last 30 seconds there. First of all, let me give you my funny but still accurate answer, and I'll kind of back into the explanation. But, man, I think for the majority of the time, burnout for people is that they're bored. I think that's what it is. Wow, so that's oversimple. You don't know the trauma I've been through. Well, we need to pull out the dictionary and talk about trauma too, real quick. Because what some people call trauma, we just call volunteerism or being a dad.
Man, that's good.
So we probably ought to define all these words. So I ultimately think it's bored, and here's why. Because what I said in that other podcast you're referencing, and I believe, is that burnout, even to use the language of burnout, like again, the images of flame, it's fire. And the illustration you've heard me say before, and I've used many times, is like a candle.
Yeah.
And the candle never burns out because the flame is too hot, but because it runs out of fuel. And nobody can argue that, by the way. They want to, well, then you need to come up with a different word, because you said burn out, as in we lost the fuel, therefore there's nothing to burn. And when a campfire burns out, or in California, when a wildfire burns out, it is out of fuel, but it has nothing to do with the heat. And so, and I feel like 99% of the time, barring the super anomaly of actual trauma or whatever, it's really that. And that's why I say boredom. Another way to think about it is people just are aimless. They did something, they got into something for the wrong reason. Man, I'm going to go to that church and start serving. Yeah, but they probably did it because it was the new church.
Yes.
With the new, toy, the new thing, the new LED wall, right? Or something like that. And that's why they got there. The problem is, after a while, they thought, man, the LED wall is not the thing that I thought it was.
Yeah.
Or the new building, or the new pastor, or the new song, or the new album. Think about all the things we try to throw at the wall and stick. Fine. But none of it really lasts. It all burns pretty quickly. It's not an efficient fuel. And that's what I mean by bored, is they just got, so then they get stuck operating, volunteering, serving, even tithing for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
And it becomes transactional. And then when that happens, that's where that cynicism comes into play, and then sarcasm, and then bitterness, and then apathy. You just chase this downward cycle, all because you ran out of fuel.
Yeah.
And I got plenty of thoughts on how to, fuel up, but that's my initial pitch, is that it's always a fuel thing, not a heat and pressure thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll keep talking about that. That's so good. Yeah. How do you fuel up?
Well, so in a lot of conversations I had back when I was overseeing that kind of higher level leaders, campus pastors, that kind of team, is I would tell them, like, hey, if anybody comes to you and says that, let's provide some care, love, handshake, back tap, bro hug, whatever you got to do to kind of triage that moment. Sure, do that. But then you need to look into yourself real quick, because I think also a large amount of, quote, burnout excuses actually are the leader's fault. What are you doing to keep the fuel in front of them? Now, the cliche way to say it is, cast vision. And, I got hot takes on that phrase. Because the more times you have to say the phrase, the less vision you actually have.
Right.
I don't have to announce to my wife, hey guys, I'm going to cast some vision on our family vacation this year. Nobody ever says that. Just tell them, give them direction, paint a picture of hope and excitement. That's vision, without saying the phrase. So anyway, but in that vein, you do need to tell people and keep it in front of them what we're doing, why it matters, where their place is in this win that we're going through, this exciting winning season. Are you winning? Have you defined winning? Can you win? I asked the church the other day, I said, can you win at church? And they got this weird look in their face. Nobody had ever asked them that. Of course, the funny thing is, as soon as I said, can you lose at church? Everybody said yes. They all had an answer. And I'm like, wait a second. So you can lose, but you can't win? And they had never thought about it, which means, naturally, as you can imagine, I'm jumping ahead here, but I also know, because I know this church very well, they're one of my clients, is they have a high volume of burnout excuses. And as soon as I asked, can you win at church? I identified, of course you're burned out, because you didn't know that you could even win. Now you don't even know where you can win, which means you also don't know what the freaking point is. ... No wonder you've got burnout, because again, you're bored, you're aimless. So all that to say, fuel, I push that on the leaders quite a bit. Now we're all grown-ups too, man. So, at some point you can fuel yourself up, be a grown-up, or you can also be an adult and move on to the next church, team, organization, job, whatever it is that you feel like is, you're burned out from. But to me, that's the tension, is finding the fuel. And I feel like I don't think this is universally true for every leader, at least not at the same level. But for me, I take personal responsibility anytime I were to hear somebody say something about burnout. I do take personal responsibility first. And then I go back and I say, well, you're right. I haven't emailed this person. I haven't taken them to eat. I haven't told them about the wins. I haven't connected them with the people, whatever. But if I have done that, I have no problem coming back at them and saying, okay, what do you mean? So yeah, it's on us to fix for sure. But again, it's a fuel thing, man. It's a fuel thing. It's not a pressure thing. It's not a heat thing.
Well, and I always tell people it's funny the things that we quit on, for those excuses, but then the things that we just keep giving opportunity after opportunity. I told somebody, I was like, you'll quit giving church your time or your resources or whatever, but like how many times has McDonald's failed you and you keep going through that stupid drive-through? How many times you tell Target like, why are you charging my card, or why, like we don't.
Yes.
Like, we just keep going at it, right? And and I think that does make you really ask yourself, like, what am I driven by? Like, what is my fuel? You know what I mean?
Well, so now let's talk to the leaders on this that are listening right now. Because the thing is, first of all, I don't understand it either, man. I will straight up find new Starbucks to go to when I go and have a bad experience. I'm like, dude, I just ordered black coffee. How you mess that up, man?
Yeah.
So I'll move on. So I don't have a tolerance for that kind of burnout there. So I hear that. But to the leader's point, to the leaders that I'm talking to now, is in church world, it is a different scoreboard. A burger was made with mustard or it wasn't. That's black or white. Did you deliver my pizza to the right address? Yes or no? But in church world, it's far more ambiguous. Going back to the previous conversations, you need to have a higher tolerance for that. But also leaders, we've got to do a better job of painting the picture of what the win is, what the direction is. Are we even making progress towards whatever it is that we say that we're doing? And that is relatively difficult compared to making widgets in a factory or flipping burgers. Sure. But you signed up for this, man. You're a leader. You're a pastor. You're a dad. Whatever the leader role you're in, you signed up for it.
Yeah.
And so paint a picture of progress of how to win and work towards that. And if at some point you don't want to, well, take that up with God, because to abdicate that sort of responsibility, I feel like it's a really dangerous place to be. So I'm admitting and saying that it is more difficult to find kind of the black and white wins of church work and leadership. Sure. Yeah. But they do exist. And that is the hard work that you ask to be a part of as a leader.
And I think it is that tired versus hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like some people who say they're tired, in reality, what you're saying is this is difficult. And
that's right.
And I think that there is I was just thinking about this just this morning. I was thinking about how, like, for some reason, and I don't know where this picture gets painted, but in the church world, especially ministry world, especially people who maybe are newer to ministry, there's for some reason this Mr. Rogers type, like, man, that when you start doing this is going to be, your life is going to be easier. It's going to be more like just flows. You're going to get along with everybody. Everything's going to, and it's just like, dude, you're in for a rude awakening because it's hard. It's hard. I was just having this conversation recently with a guy I was trying to minister to. He was asking for prayer, and he's walked through some things in his marriage and trying to save his marriage, all that kind of stuff. And he said something I thought was so interesting. He said, I'm just exhausted. I'm just exhausted, because the stuff gets every argument we have, my past gets brought back up, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it was just like God spoke to me in that moment. I just said, well, which one is more exhausting? Because you have three things to choose to be tired over. Yeah. One, you should have been exhausted preventing what happened
right.
2 years ago in your marriage, but you were lazy with it and it cost you.
Yeah.
You can be exhausted trying to piece together and save your marriage and save your family, or you can be exhausted from dividing all your stuff and trying to figure out when the kids are coming to visit.
Mm.
And it was just like this eye-opening, like, I never thought about it that way. Because it's like, it is exhausting. It's exhausting when you're trying to do the right thing and make progress. I think people are just waiting for, I think everything in people's lives becomes the end instead of the means to an end.
Right.
And so when they get to the end, they're not happy.
No, that's right. Well, I think that's the gift you give that person is perspective. And again, that's another thing that you can put on the list of responsibilities of a leader is perspective. I think, let me just take a tangent real quick. There's always three things that I always told the leaders they were responsible for is perspective, permission, and pay. And pay is just P simply because it's alliterated and it makes it easier to remember. But that's just resourcing in general.
Yeah.
It's up to you as the leader, because you're in an elevated position. You have maybe a higher credit card limit. You have access to the checkbook, whatever it is. As a dad, I pay for things. I resource the fun things we do as a family or whatever. But so perspective, permission, and pay were the three main things I would say that a boss would have, for example. Anyway, so in that case, you give this guy perspective on, well, let's unpack what exhausting is, because, and I think you're right. You should be exhausted from fighting for your marriage, not fighting in your marriage. And so I think you just helped a ton of leaders right there, is think through, oh, okay, that's what I need to do first. So before I go to a conference about how to help burnout in my volunteers, why don't you just define, help people reverse engineer their complaint first, and just processing in your own, past experiences, your own past failures, given that perspective probably eliminates a lot of those burnout conversations of the future. So I think that's great what you did.
Talk about this idea, as we are on this vein of burnout, because I think there's some leaders out there listening that maybe they feel like, I think the thing that always gets thrown back to me, this is probably a common question I get asked all the time. Like, how do you manage tension between family life, ministry life? If you feel burnout here, when is it time to leave? When is it time to quit? Blah, blah. I think you had this really cool insight on this idea of quitting versus graduating. But before you get to that point, I want you to kind of elaborate on maybe your thoughts of, it always baffles me why people ask, how do you separate, or how do you, manage family tension versus, because I don't know what that means. I know what they're saying.
Yeah,
but
right.
For me, it's just a different context. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of that. If there's a leader out there that's wrestling with, like, man, they feel like they're mentally, emotionally, spiritually exhausted, family life suffering, whatever. Like, speaking of that.
Yeah, I don't know either where the balance thing comes from, the work-life balance people talk about in any job. That's not just ministry, here in banking and everything in between. I personally don't get it either, because it doesn't compute with me. And I don't know who the first person that wrote a book about it is, but I hate him because it's mythical. It's like, I hope in the book they talk about unicorns also, because I think that's so dumb. Yeah. So first, I might just challenge everybody, stop saying it. And then change your language to redefine things, use different words. You can still complain, but now I'm just making you find a thesaurus and find different words for it. Because as soon as you change the language, it probably changes the image in your mind to one that you can then work. I can fix that. So if you think about the balance, let's use the word balance. If you think about balance, think about a tightrope walker at a circus, and they hold this really long pole. Everybody has seen this. You can YouTube this, whatever. Everybody's seen the guy, the tightrope walker, with the big pole. And the reason he does the big pole is because in order to balance, he has to spread wide the weight, meaning he's got to put a piece of weight over there, so to speak, and a weight over on that side, so to speak. So if I'm going to have to do work-life balance, I have got to bring total separation to my family and my work. And the further I separate those two things, the more balanced they are. Now that I spelled it out for you that way, is that really what you want to do? No. And I think a lot of people do, which is why you have the cliche dad out there that leaves the office, spends an hour and a half at the bar first. So that's where he's starting the transition from work to family balance. He's going to work through the bar for an hour and a half to, quote, veg out, to, quote, decompress, whatever. And then he can get to the family. At the same time, though, the funny thing is that version of balance robbed his family of an hour and a half of time, because now they got to go to bed in 30 minutes by the time he gets home. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's a downward spiral I don't think you recover from, all because you think of the myth of balance. So for me, it's always integration. Why can't my family be a part of my business, my church, my ministry? I don't understand. It doesn't compute with me. Well, man, how are my kids gonna? I'm a banker, man. How are my kids gonna know anything about banking? Did you ask them? Did you talk about it? I'm assuming your kids are the most financially, influenced and inspired and educated kids on the planet then, right? Well, no, I don't really talk to them about that. That's parenting, man. That's not your job. That's parenting.
Right.
And we all know, especially the banker people out there, know how financially illiterate, especially Americans are, but I think just worldwide people are. Why? Because we don't talk to kids about it. So even in banking, I can argue all day that work-life balance, and that doesn't make sense to me. The family work balance thing doesn't make sense to me. So I would want integration. So now the challenge is not balancing. And this goes back to something you said a minute ago. Exhausting, fine, but let's find the right thing to be exhausted about. So same thing here.
Yeah.
If work and life and work and family balance is hard, okay, well, good. So you're used to hard. Now let's just change hard. Now work hard at integrating your family with your work. Well, why not? And I would just love for somebody to argue that. Now, of course, we know nobody's going to argue that. They're going to be like, dang it, that's true. And all we did was take the same level of hard and redirect it towards a different outcome. And that's what I've done. I love that. It's helpful for me. I have worked, by the way, I know that I'm self-employed now. People might do the whole "it must be nice" statement. But man, I've worked at a ridiculously intense church or two, and I've been busy before. And then I did, quote, secular, quote, real world jobs plenty of times as well. And sure enough, my kids have been involved in that. So I'm just telling you from a place of experience, I've done that. I think you've done the same. So that's my thought on work-life balance first, is it doesn't exist and it shouldn't.
Well, and just so people know, I've seen you live that out. You've even talked about, you're coming to visit in February. You're like, hey, I'm bringing my son with me. And when I come in April, I'm going to bring my daughter with me.
That's right.
That's been cool to witness. So I just want people to know, you do live that out. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. I love that.
So now, finish that train of thought going into quitting versus graduating. Because especially in the ministry world, I think you said it earlier too, this whole idea of even when people get a job with the church, it's like, dude, it's almost like you have just gotten sentenced to life in prison. That's how some people
totally. I don't get it, man.
I don't either.
Ultimately in all this stuff, we live in the greatest country in the world, which is fact, not opinion. There's 4 billion studies to prove it, and everybody outside the country would prove this to you as well. So let me just take a tangent on that. If you don't know anybody internationally, you need a friend just to give you perspective that your life is awesome. Okay. That being said, nobody's making you work at that job. You're welcome to get another job. Well, that's too hard too. Well, which one you want, man? Yeah. At the end of the day, you just like to complain. Just be honest. That's what you want to do. And you probably ought to be a songwriter, because that's all you do is write lyrics. Probably do a country song complaining. Okay. So again, but that's definition. And I can just help people define what you want to do is complain. I thought you wanted to fix it. My bad. You just want to complain. That's okay. But now we've defined what your actual endeavor is. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but for the people who do want to fix things, I do have this thought about quitting. I think quitting a job, for example, looks almost identical to graduating, right? You go through this season, you spend a lot of time, you invest time, resources, emotions, you build relationships, and it lasts for a really long time. And then you come to the end of it and you're like, oh man. But the only difference between quitting a job and quitting high school is that one of them you planned for, the other one you didn't.
Wow.
And, or maybe another difference is, no, because I was going to say the other difference is somebody tells you have to be done. And sometimes that happens in a job too.
Yeah.
I just want to be the guy that knows about it ahead of time. I don't want to be surprised, which is, I got fired in this case. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are afraid to move on from a job for a few reasons. One, it could be the ambiguity, the idea that they don't have enough money to figure out what's next. Okay, fine. But I've talked to a lot of friends recently, as in yesterday, and plenty over the last couple of years, that ultimately, if you get down to it, what they're afraid of is quitting the comfortable thing. And they just don't want that stigma of quitting. And so something that God gave me, I literally learned it from nobody other than just God, I guess, gave it to me, was the idea when I'm graduating. And so specifically when I left the Elevation staff a couple of years ago, I left at the top. I left on great terms. I stayed at the church for another year. I still support that whole team. Anybody who I've ever hired or developed over there, I'm still friends with them, still talk to them very regularly. So that wasn't quitting anything. I just had reached the point of I think we're done. And we viewed it as a graduation from a particular season. Our time had ended doing that thing. So do I still want to build the church? Yes. Do you build the church at Elevation? No. Right. Same thing. Do I want to be educated? Yes. Educated in high school till I'm 30? No. Right? You see what I'm saying? You just apply the logic of graduation of school to this job thing. And I think that frees probably a million people. Is some people do need to be fired. That totally exists. And in church world, we fire far too few people, but that's another podcast. I think some people are quitters. I do think that's the case. They don't want to do hard things. They don't want to push through, and they finally just whatever, and they leave. Problem is, most of the time I find that people, when they quit, it's too late. And now they're just going to carry bitterness with them too.
Yeah.
Which again, is their fault, 100% their fault.
Right.
Again, we work in a free country. Nobody made you stay that long. You don't understand. So I had no other job. Well, now you quit and you're bitter and you still don't have another job. So did that pan out for you?
Yeah.
So, but what if you graduated? What if you knew what your role and place was in the organization? Your purpose was on the planet. What if you could define yourself as a teacher, a pastor, a builder, whatever the thing is, but then also define what that actually is. And that way, when you have that image in mind, you can also better understand when it's done. And then you could say, I'm done. I'm done being employed for that particular role. Yeah. I can still stay at the church. I can still patronize that business. Maybe if you worked at a business and you graduated from it, you can still do all that and be in a relationship. But that for me was really, really healthy and helpful. And I've coached dozens of people on quote quitting their jobs simply by changing the name, and we've worked through it because it's freeing. They graduated. They don't have to be sad. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be negative and feel like you're quitting something. You're not. You graduated. You're supposed to leave. So,
well, dude, that's so powerful because if you think about too, and this goes back to the whole, we make our jobs the end, not the means to an end, right? And I think what some people tend to do is like they're looking for a career or a job or something to get to a lifestyle, right? Because some people, well, I can't quit. I've built a lifestyle around this salary or around this role,
right?
And so what that says to me is like you've made this thing like the ultimate goal.
That's
instead of understanding like this is a means to an end. We're trying to build the kingdom. You can do that in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be here in this position or there in that position. It really is a means to an end. But because people get used to that lifestyle or build a lifestyle around a position or around that, it's almost impossible for them to say like, hey, I need to get out of this.
Yep. You know what I think it is? This is going to be maybe sound oversimplified, but if I could pinpoint a time where it probably got worse than ever before, was the invention of direct deposit.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Explain.
There's all kinds of studies right now. You can go out and look up like the studies of the addiction of your phone, right? And you get that little red push notification on your phone, a little circle on your phone. Oh, I got an email, got an Instagram DM or something like that. And it shoots dopamine into your brain, all this kind of stuff. That's scientific. That's not my opinion. That's actually, and everybody can go and read these studies now. I think that exact same thing exists for direct deposit. And I think that's what people are addicted to. And I have a lot of friends too. Again, had this very exact conversation 2 days ago where you're not addicted to growing the church. You're not addicted to working at the church. What you're addicted to, like heroin and carbohydrates, is a direct deposit every 2 weeks because it's the most predictable thing. Because if it didn't exist, I bet you wouldn't be called to grow that church, would you? I bet that, I love my job. I bet that goes away. No, you love your salary. And I understand I love my job, I love my salary kind of go together, but they technically are different things. And all we got to do is remove that direct deposit and we'll find out real quick what you're called to do.
Wow.
And I think that was the beginning of the end for a lot of people is when we invented direct deposit a while back.
Well, I'll tell you what I've walked through as a pastor in 10 years is like, I've had some people like, they were just like sold out volunteers, right? Until you pay them.
That's right.
And then the moment the pay is removed, they leave.
Yep.
And it's like, wait a minute. I mean, I've even had people say like, man, you ain't got to pay me nothing. Like I literally had people quit their job saying God told me to quit my job so I could do this full time without you guys paying me. Fantastic. And then when they didn't get paid full time, they left. It's like, I quit my job. Like I wasn't God. I didn't say, quit your job. I didn't ask you to do this.
Been there, man.
But there's something about a paycheck in the church world that just changes the entire relationship. And that's the thing that I found the most suckiest in what I do. It's just like, can we not let this define the relationship? But
that's right.
Too often it does.
Volunteers will always have the most pure work because it comes from the purest motive. And even if they didn't intend it that way, that's what it is because there's no entitlement there. Yeah. And as soon as I've said plenty of times and coached plenty of leaders on that too, as soon as you add a paycheck, that's okay, but you've also started the clock.
Yeah.
And some clock could be 20 years. Most of them are 6 months to 18 months. And then at that point, you start to see that entitlement. Wait a second, cost of living increase. Wait a second. You expect that? Like, I don't know that police and firemen got it. Teachers didn't get it one just because the inflation's high. But all of a sudden, now my pastor needs to provide you with that. You see what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden, we've now twisted the motive to like, well, I get paid. And then I start looking for other jobs because of it. And you left the thing you loved, man. You forgot who you were when you were called. And now you went from building the church to being employed as a project manager at a church.
Wow.
And that's why the productivity went down. That's why the church is plateaued. That's why we are no longer friends and co-laborers, soldiers together. Instead, we're employer and just, struggling to keep everybody employed. And then 10% of our time is spent towards actually reaching people. When, again, all you had to do was just stay a volunteer or keep them a volunteer,
Yeah. Man, that's so good.
Yeah.
Well, as we get ready to kind of close, it seems like we've been talking for like 15 minutes, but
I know. That's what I was thinking, man.
So if fuel is the key to energy, if we're trying to prevent burnout, all these things, then it matters how we fuel our bodies, our minds, souls, all that stuff. So what's a SWebb suggestion? What does SWebb run on throughout the year? What's your fuel, man, for all these things? Because here's what I want to say this before you say this, before you answer. I don't know that I've met anyone as constant as you. And what I mean by that is like, I've never seen you too high or too low. You are just like, you're almost that just you're thinking about like driving a nail, like if you miss a little high, miss a little low, that nail bends or whatever. Like you're just a consistent boom, nailed it, boom, nailed it, boom.
Right.
And so like tell us what keeps you on that path, man. How do you fuel yourself?
Well, so first of all, I appreciate the mention of the constant. I want to be that. It hit me maybe in my 30s. For reference, I'm 43, if anybody didn't know. So around my mid 30s, it hit me like, I want to be that. And I didn't know that. I didn't know I was that. A few people kind of mentioned sort of, things sort of like that in passing. And then I kind of leaned into it. Like, that's what I want to be. I've made jokes before, and maybe you've heard it on my tombstone. All I wanted to say is dependable. Or he did what he said he would do. He didn't say too much, but what he did say, that's what he did. And so part of it could be innate. It's a gifting sort of thing, personality. I don't know. Part of it's that, but since I have known it, so again, maybe the last 10 years or so, and since people like you've said this, I appreciate it. It helps me because it continues to then fuel me like, okay, good. I'm on the right track. I need to keep doing that. Oh, that spoke to them. Okay. I need to remember that, which brings me to my first practical example. I might tell you is I do a pretty good job of capturing encouragement and hanging on to it. And when I mean practically, I mean, I will screenshot people's text messages, and I have some of yours, by the way, or voice memos, and I put them into a folder that's now, it used to be in Evernote, now it's in Google Drive, where I just store those. And then when I need any sort of, I got to psych myself up for something, or I'm having a bad day or whatever, I just pull up the folder and read a text from Brandon Petty 2019 or something like that. And it's the weirdest thing for some people, but it's that fuel has almost an infinite shelf life. Because we all know what that nostalgia feels like. Oh man, that's been 50 years since I read that, since we had that meeting. Like I can't wait to get there. In 50 years, I look back and be like, man, I can't believe when I was 27, this guy sent me that email or whatever. And so we can all imagine that because we watch movies for that reason.
Right.
We love my son, we're fast forwarding past the bad parts, but right now we're watching the Titanic because he read a book about it. I was like, dude, they made a great movie about it. Yeah. But even that, it's 100 years ago. It's got that weird nostalgic sort of what if, man, I can't believe that happened sort of thing. And so I just weaponized it. And so instead of having them only in my head, I'm going to stock up so that I can go back and reference them. And that's very helpful for me on the fuel. So when I'm like, man, I'm not making a difference. Man, nobody's calling me to come consult or coach them. Dang it. I must not know anything. I just go back and be like, oh, wait a second. Look at this guy. He told me that they had 27 salvations at this event I told him to do. Stuff like that really fuels me. And this is true for everybody. This is not just a church ministry pastor sort of thing. A mom can do this. Start screenshotting and the DMs, the text messages you get that speak life into you, hold on to those. Those are game changers. And then the other thing I tell everybody to do is the thing that, and you've heard this, you probably taught on this, is the thing that you need the most is probably the thing you need to give away. And so like, if you need encouragement, then I'm assuming you're going to pick up the phone and encourage somebody. And it's weird how God's economy works that way. That's not true all the time for money and finances in the secular world. I get it. But the way God's economy works is the thing that you need is the thing you need to give away.
So
or the thing that you give away is the thing that maybe God's going to bring back to you. Not dollar for dollar, not encouragement for encouragement, but whatever it is that you need, try to grab whatever ounce you have left, give it out, and that's what's coming back to you. And I found that to be true, most powerful for me in the words of affirmation side of it. As a love language, that's mine is words of affirmation, or more specifically, I just want to know that what I do is making a difference.
Yeah.
And people don't have to like it. That's the other thing you know about me. People don't have to like it. I just needed to know that it worked.
Yeah.
And so I do those two things right there, and it's a game changer for me to stay fueled up.
Dude, that's so good. I want to just do a quick recap, give some people some keys to the victory, because I wrote down 5 that, like, if you aren't paying attention, this is what people need to be doing to help in your New Year's, whatever you want to call it, continuations, goals, whatever, preventing burnout. But one, I love the capture encouragement, hang on to it. So good. I kind of like beat myself up over stuff like that, because I literally have a box. If anybody's ever sent me a thank you card or an encouragement card, like I have a box full of those cards, and like, man, part of me is like, man, should I throw these? What do I do with these? Like I almost feel like I'm throwing people away when I throw that away, like,
right.
Which I'm kind of a hoarder in that sense, I guess. But 2, pray for a higher tolerance for ambiguity. Man,
yes,
that one hit deep. That's so good. 3, take responsibility first. So when you're talking about being burnout, exhausted, all those different things, what is your responsibility in that? I love that. 4, paint a picture of the win. Man. Yeah. That is also good, because how do you know if you have the right fuel if you don't have if you don't know what that fuel is?
That's right.
5, the thing you need the most, give it away.
Yeah.
I think all 5 of those, you could probably do an entire episode on just each one of those. But obviously some great nuggets throughout that entire thing. A leader's responsibilities, perspective, permission, pay. Gosh, so good. Dude, I could sit and talk to you half a day. I want to respect your time.
We need to do this a lot more, man.
Dude, 100%. But thank you so much. For those of you guys don't know, I think it's StephenWebb.com. Remind me of the website.
SWebb.fyi. Can you believe that? SWebb.fyi.
Wow. Make sure you write that down. Instagram, what's your handle?
Stephen P. Webb. Stephen with a PH. Stephen P. Webb.
Stephen P. Webb. And then, of course, you're on Facebook. Make sure you guys go follow SWebb. Every day he's putting out just gold. And so I love, man, you have a gift of perspective. You have a gift of redirecting people's kind of the way they look at it, which is, I think, the name of the podcast. Oh, I've almost forgot the podcast.
Me too.
Thinkless. So Thinkless podcast. Are you guys still doing the other one too?
No, we graduated from that one too, but we're on Thinkless, man.
Yeah. Thinkless is phenomenal. So that's ThinkLess. And so it's you and then Parker, what's his last name?
Parker Richardson.
Phenomenal podcast. So if you want people to be upfront, honest, have real conversations, and don't beat around the bush, please go check out Thinkless. It's phenomenal. Thank you for being such a great friend, man. Love you and so grateful for you.
Love you, man. Thanks again.
Just remind everybody that God made us to win, but in order for us to win, we got to win within. Dude, you're amazing.
Man, you're a good podcast host, bro. And you're intentional. You take notes about it. I was telling Wade this yesterday too. I was like, man, you're the good interviewer, man. And he's like, I like you and Parker. I was like, nah, you're just being nice. Me and Parker just get up there and wing it and just hope for the best. We got to be intentional. We're so undisciplined, man. So your podcast, the last, obviously 2 times I've been on it, it's been great, man. So I appreciate you making the time for it.
I appreciate it. I'm trying to get better. Which I sent you, if you notice, it's a little bit different. I try to just maybe form a few questions and then let you enjoy talking about what you enjoy talking about. I think I saw a post one time, somebody talking about why Joe Rogan is such a good, why everybody, like, he's the number 1 podcast. It's like, because if you think about Joe Rogan in general, there's not a lot special about him.
Right.
But he's just great at getting people to talk about what they love to talk about.
That's right.
And that's what I'm trying to get better at, man. So
yeah, me too. I love it. No, I was real helpful to get that text. Dude, I forgot about David McEwen, by the way. Were you on the show yet?
I'm going to be. We connected the other day. We talked via FaceTime. And so he kind of like built around what the episode's going to be about. And then we're going to set up a time to record. He said it's going to be in February, I think. So
great.
But no, man, super grateful. Yeah, man. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Yeah, no problem, man. I'm glad that worked out.
All right, man. We'll go grab you a juice box or something.
That's what I'm going to do. I got to get some calories, man.
I'll talk to you soon, SWebb.
See you, boss. Bye.
Yeah.